Welcome to KC Cares, Kansas City's nonprofit voice, telling the stories of Kansas City nonprofits and the people behind them, nonprofit and profit intersection. KC Cares is proudly sponsored by the Ewing Marion Kaufman Foundation. I'm Ruth Baum-Biggis. This has been a tough year going plus, fighting a pandemic and imagine raising money for very worthy causes. However, a recent survey indicates that 1 in 5 donors plan to give more in 2021. Well, we have Dr. Philanthropy back with us, Jeffrey Byrne, who's with Byrne Pelofsky and Associates, and he's our guru, and we're going to dive into this issue. Jeffrey, we're months plus. Positiveness, please. I went back and looked, and we talked like weeks after this started, and it was a little scary.
Yes, we
did.
Paint
us a picture.
Well, thanks, Ruth, for having me today, and thanks for all you're doing for nonprofits with KC Cares and this program. I know it's really listened to by hundreds, if not thousands or tens of thousands of people, and it's really a very good tool for all nonprofit folks to put into their fundraising or nonprofit suitcase. You know, I think back that a year ago today, Ruth, I got back from a 3-week adventure of a lifetime in the Antarctica, as you know. And as I was coming back out of Buenos Aires yesterday, friends of mine a year ago said, once you get into the United States, it's going to be pandemonium like you've never seen. And I just had no idea of the changes that had taken place 3 weeks before our country literally started to shut down. And I arrived here yesterday or today, a year ago, and life changed forever. And, you know, the one thing that every executive or leader of a nonprofit had to learn immediately was how to adapt to this new reality. And I think that most nonprofits, if I look back over the past year, and we've worked with about 50 organizations. Currently, we're working with organizations from Miami to Tampa to New York City, over to Modesto, California, which is in the San Francisco area, and obviously many nonprofits here in the Midwest. They have been able to adapt to the realities of this type of technology using Zoom, Cisco WebEx, Microsoft Teams. They've been able to relocate to their homes and for 8 to 10 to 12 weeks, manage their organizations and their functions out of their apartments or homes. Many went back to work. If you weren't essential during that time, and there are so much of need for essential nonprofits that work in the homelessness area, in the food hunger area, in domestic violence and mental health. If you weren't in those 4 areas in healthcare, then you might not have even seen your office for a year. Can you imagine not seeing and being around your colleagues for a year, but interacting on a daily basis from your living room, from your desk in your kitchen, from even some in their bedrooms, and conducting business in a new way? And I feel that when we see Giving USA numbers for charitable donations for 2020 on June 16, that we are going to see that Americans were generous to particular causes having to do with one individuals. We are very philanthropic from a mankind to womankind situation. And we saw that we will, I believe, see that there is going to be abundance of donations to health services, to human services, to social services, to youth and family nonprofits as well during this pandemic year. Not only did we see our healthcare pandemic, we also then realized an economic pandemic which affected everyone. And Ruth, you know, this $1.9 trillion, regardless of what your political philosophy is, 85% of Americans are in the process of receiving a $1,400 check in their mail, and already 90 million checks have gone out to Americans. So there is great need in our country. There continues to be great need. And our nonprofits, I believe, in a new way, have really stood up and responded in a very positive way.
We've seen like a magnification of those, I guess you'd call them frontline service nonprofits, you know, health, mental health, food, home, shelter. What, from your observation, has been the other guys or gals in the room? Arts nonprofits, culture of, or I don't mean to be stuck there, but the other kinds of nonprofits that we know have very noble causes. What have you been seeing this pandemic year plus of how they're handling and what they've had to do?
Well, as you know, Ruth, I joined the Parsons Dance Company board in New York, which is a contemporary dance company that travels around the country and the world. And it's 35 years old this year. And one of the realities that we at the David Parsons Dance Company have seen is that we have literally performed not one time in 1 year. And performance is at least 65% of our overall budget. So, you know, I think the arts here in Kansas City, the Kansas City Ballet, the Kansas City Symphony, the Missouri Repertory Theater, Starlight, many of those, all of our arts organizations have really had to shut down and really think about how they're going to sustain themselves. And those are the, what I call the haves, that have been around. They have good endowments, they have good donor bases, but they've had to make draconian and drastic changes to weather this pandemic. Small nonprofit art organizations, I feel, are going to have been at peril. They're probably already out of business, are teetering on being non-existent. And I think that we will see a resurgence of these types of organizations in 2021 and especially 2022. But as we look at other sectors like animals, I believe that we're going to see probably that animals have seen an increase in support, since that we know that we believe that support for animals is like we have turned to our animals, obviously, in 2020 during the pandemic to be our best friends. And I believe that Americans have adopted animals as dogs and cats as well. And I think that we'll see an increase there. I'm not exactly sure how the environment is going to do during this last year, although it was an election year. And of course, the environment is cause one of many voters and on the minds of many voters as we look to the future. So I think educational giving, education has been very innovative. We are working with a number of colleges, and we have seen them do more giving days. We've seen them contacting their donors through their students in different ways. So they have student-a-thons where their students are calling alumni. And I have seen that with organizations of colleges that we're working with, that their alumni and their donors have stepped up to give during this treacherous year that we've gone through. So I believe that we're going to see overall probably a slight increase or slight decrease in giving. I don't believe we'll see a large decrease or a large increase, but I think we are hoping to see at least a steadiness. As you said, 1 in 5 donors say they're going to give more in 2021. And looking at that same article that you referenced from the Lilly School of Philanthropy, 9 in 10 donors say that they intend to give to charity. So, that's 90% of our of individuals who give to who say they're going to give are going to give. And of that, 19% say they're going to give more in 2021 than they did in 2020. One unique fact I found in that article, Ruth, was that donors are giving to friends and their causes more last year than we have in the past. And I know as I sat home or sat in my office over the past year, and I saw friends of mine on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram posting charities that they're supporting, since I felt like I had been closer to my friends this past year than I have been in the last 20 years, I gave to their causes. So I think that that is very encouraging that we see that our friends have been receiving more gifts from our friends over the past year.
Is that really a refacing of what has been a core part of fundraising? Is that fundraising aspect? And how do you anticipate, or how should nonprofits take that to heart if we have that kind of information?
Well, I think it's the way you use it as a nonprofit. How are you able to capture that information? Do you have systems able to capture the information? Obviously, you do with the donations, because those donations were probably made online. And then how do you manipulate the data from the donor of putting together the pledge form or the receipt that they had to fill out? How are those being utilized in their software systems? How are those being analyzed and put into new campaigns for this 2021-2022 year? And I think that that is the question that I would have to our listeners and viewers today, to say, how are you using your systems in your overall plans to recontact those donors? In what way are you doing it? Are you using friend-to-friend fundraising, which is, we know, very effective and has been utilized for massive runs, telethons, and other types of large events that have been happening. But this year, we've been doing it on the past year on the internet. And how are we going to be utilizing that technology in an enhanced way as we move forward? Those nonprofits and organizations that are smart and are paying attention to that part of their fundraising plan will probably continue to do well in that area. It's just what the other areas of your plan are on your one-on-one solicitations, on your foundation and corporate grants. Are you going to reinstitute special event fundraising later this year? I mean, I am seeing with some of our clients that our clients are starting to want to very slowly meet one-on-one. And that's just with us. That's not necessarily their boards of directors. That's not necessarily them going out and visiting with their donors yet. But we are seeing an open door where, as more of Americans and Kansas Cityans get the COVID vaccine, that there is a more comfort. The CDC has said that we can meet in small groups. We're meeting in small groups now. And I think that that will just continue to expand as we get through the spring and into the summer. I also see that some of the groups that we've supported in the past are going to have some type of arts gatherings this summer. I can think of two festivals that I've supported over the years that it's a dance festival and a music festival that they're getting together. Now, I think we're going to see lower attendance ratios, but I think that we're seeing a lot of reopening and slowly re-entering into this new reality.
Well, we both know that special events, everybody, gets excited for this gala or this concert or whatever event organizations might do. But you also mentioned that's going to change. What are you hearing from the folks that you work with and beyond? Because I know you monitor, the whole fundraising world, about how they're tweaking those events so that they can continue to raise funds.
Yeah, well, actually this morning, I'll give you a real example. We are working with Welcome House in Kansas City, and it is a recovery house for men who are in sobriety after addiction, maybe out of prison, out of jail, or they need a place to recover from too. And they normally have a Welcome House, a special event each year that has 1,100 members, 1,100 donors that come. Obviously, in 2020, that had to be canceled, and it was live on Facebook. This year, I just read this morning at 6 a.m. when I was going through my emails that they announced on June 30th, they're having a live event, a fundraiser, and they're having Sugar Ray Williams and Tom Watson present. And they're limiting it to the first 400 people that respond. So you're already seeing that mandatory maximums are changing, but they are opening up these types of events. We don't, at Byrne Pelofsky and Associates, really do special events. We support them, but we don't make that as a practice. But I believe that we're going to start seeing more nonprofits start to step out and do smaller scale special events as we get through the summer and into the fall then.
Well, I know a couple of nonprofits that I'm familiar with. What their twist seems to be is look at that event, put it out there, reserving that it may have to go all virtual depending on what happens, or having a virtual component. What do you think about, pricing a ticket, be in the room or not be in the room, and, still being able to support an organization and see people like, Sugar Ray and Tom Watson, for example?
Yeah, I would have pretty definite thoughts about whether you're in the room or on a Zoom for a special event, that you should pay the same price. Because the nonprofit needs your donation, whether your butt is in the seat or your butt is on the couch enjoying it on your smart TV. So I believe that most nonprofits that I attended special events in 2020 that were Zoom, they did not change their pricing. They did change their underwriting donations that they asked for. They lowered those, and I hope that they return to a level that were pre-COVID as we look later into 21 or 22. So as you know, I think about our clients who really are involved in major gift fundraising, in capital campaign feasibility studies, in their annual fundraising, or in their grants. What we see with our nonprofit mix that we work with is that there's a good mix of foundation giving and requests, of going to individual families who've been supportive and asking them to re-up during this extraordinary year. making sure that our nonprofits that we work with are capturing any of the CARES Act money that's coming through, or now the 1.9 trillion that's going to come through, which includes new earmarks, federal earmarks. Congress has close to decided to reinstitute earmarks that were eliminated back in 2010 through 2020. But congressional offices are going to start accepting applications for special project fundraising that have significance in a member's district. So for those who are in Congressman Emmanuel Cleaver's district or Congressman Todd Graves' district up north in Kansas City and northern Missouri, or in Congresswoman Sharice David's district in Johnson County and over into Lawrence, we would see that their offices are going to start accepting applications for earmarks. Now, you have to make sure that you are meeting with the staff of the congressman or congresswoman. You have to make your case for your case, and you have to be reasonable in your request as well, and make sure it's of the interest to the member that you're talking to, their interest within what they're doing within their district. So I think there are a number of opportunities for nonprofits as we look into the middle of this year. And it's also, they've got to capture some of that money coming out of Washington, because there's going to be a gusher, a tidal wave out of Washington, D.C. of money like we've never seen before. And it's to really revive and put a spark plug to our economy to really get it moving once again. So I encourage all organizations to think out of the box and think about how they're going to approach competitive grants on the national basis and the national government. Make sure you're thinking about the pass-throughs that are coming through the state of Missouri or the state of Kansas, and how those pass-throughs are passing into the Jefferson City or Topeka, and then those are rolling back into Jackson County, Johnson County, Kansas City, Missouri, Kansas City, Kansas, where have you. So there's just a lot of work that nonprofits need to do on the public side of potential funding as well.
What's the best way for a nonprofit to begin that conversation if they've really never dealt with that? How do you find out about it?
I think that's a really good question, Ruth. Of course, it comes natural to Lisa Pelofsky and myself because we have public policy background. She worked on the Hill for a congressman, and I worked on the state level for a governor. So it comes natural that, the elected officials that we have are what I believe are our advocates. I think that we've got to not necessarily set up meetings with our members, the elected members, but their top staff. And that's what their top staff are there for. They are hired by the public to meet with the public. And I think that you've got to package your program, your operational program or your capital need in a way that is going to capture the interest of the congressional or your state rep or state senator member. And to do that, you're welcome to call Byrne Pelofsky and Associates and ask for Lisa Pelofsky or Jeffrey Byrne. Sorry for the plug, I don't normally do that. But I believe that many of our nonprofits, frankly, are scared to reach out to elected officials. They feel like they're crossing the line and they'll lose their IRS designation as a charity. It has nothing to do with contacting elected officials. It has to do with giving political gifts to elected officials from your nonprofit, which is illegal. But you, as a member of a nonprofit, have every right to contact your elected official who really works for you in your district or your voting area and ask for their support and sit down with them or their staff and see where they might be able to help you with what your needs are and what their synergies or what their influence might be as well. They only have certain influence. A member only has certain influences on what committees they might sit on, what areas of government that they are tasked to oversee. So you've got to be smart when you sit down with an elected official or their staff, so that you don't go in not knowing anything, but you go in with a strategy. And I think that that's what we help our clients do, is help select a strategy and know exactly what we're going to talk about and what we're going to ask for.
And a lot of that information is public about what your congressperson or your senator, what committees they sit on and what their interests are. So that's out there for people to find. Before we close today, I do want you to be the guru, the looking in the crystal ball, and share with us kind of what would be, a few tips as we move forward and we're coming out of this time that nonprofits should be mindful of in their fundraising.
I think, Ruth, that you've got to just double down on best practices. As I like to say, there are no new ideas in fundraising. They're just good ideas that have been done. You want to dust them off. You want to make them your own, and then give someone credit if you dusted it off from someone else. I do think that reaching out to donors and asking if they're interested in coming to your organization and doing site visits is really important. A lot of donors have not gotten out. Individuals and families have not gotten out over the past year. There's a real hunger. You and I were just talking before this program about us wanting to get back out and traveling. Well, we want to travel and see in our own communities those nonprofit causes that we've supported, but we haven't seen for the past year. So I think having individuals and families and corporate representatives or foundation representatives to your organization, let them see a little bit about what your work has been, the struggle, the unique circumstances that you have been in. All three of those points are really important to stress. This has been an unprecedented time, and that we have to ask for unprecedented support because of the unprecedented times that we live in. And in all organizations that I have worked with or been associated with the past year, I feel that once we don't talk about instability or sustainability, but we talk about these times that we've lived in and the reason for increased support that is needed. Because I feel like if you talk about sustainability or existence, donors don't want to throw good money at a bad cause or a losing cause. They want to support causes that are really still viable, still needed. And we know so much of our nonprofits have really added to the social fabric of our daily lives. And we know that hunger and homelessness and domestic violence and mental health issues have really been at the forefront. And those types of organizations need our help now, continuing into the future more than they have in the past. So I think that we're going to still continue to want to give to our to each of our man or woman or children to make sure that they're taken care of. We're also going to want to support those art organizations that we want to see on stage, this summer. And we want to support those causes for the environment and our animals to continue to make sure that they're supported at the level they need. So I believe, as you are talking to donors, as you are inviting, as you start to see them, invite them, meet with them in person, focus on them, focus on how they've done. really understand how they got through this past 12 months and how their family did that. Don't just focus on yourself, because part of the fundraising process is listening and learning and building that relationship. So just like you and I have kept up over the last 12 months over telephone and email and on Zoom, that's what we, and now hopefully in person in the next month or two, that's what we need to continue to do, is practice those best practices that have got us thus far to where we are.
Thank you, Dr. Philanthropy. We look forward to catching up with you again in a few months and see how this is all playing out. And we want to thank you for listening to KC Cares, Kansas City's nonprofit voice. We're produced by Charitable Communications, and we're proudly sponsored by the Ewing Marion Kaufman Foundation. If you'd like to be a guest on KC Cares or underwriting opportunities to support our work, visit kccaresonline.org and spread the love. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter at KC Cares Radio and on Instagram at KC Cares Online. And then catch us on ESPN 1510 AM and 94.5 FM Saturday mornings at 8 AM. Thank you for listening to KC Cares.